So was Paige. Must have stepped down. There. Having a forum.
Can't stay.
No, Jim can't stay. No, he doesn't have one kid that's sick.
Tis the season. And Dennis is too.
They're right there.
There he is. No, he couldn't stay.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting, please, and ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have the roll call, Denise?
Chairwoman Patricia King, Vice Chair Margaret Byrne,
Here.
Jim McGowan,
Absent with,
Dennis Grignolati.
Here.
Paige Latunas.
okay. Let's see. Any comment, board members? Anything? Margaret?
Well, I finally had a chance over the holiday and Lady Raiders basketball. And proud of them at the game, but they didn't stop until the end. It was great to see.
Good, good. I've attended 2 CIC meetings. You attended one with me. And actually, they were very pleased with the way that Sean and Charmaine did the tiers, tier 1 and 3, rating their request, which is really good. They've asked the other commissioners to continue. Hopefully tomorrow night we'll be able to quickly get through some of that trend setting here. So that was, so to an OPEB meeting yesterday. For those that don't know, OPEB is the Retirement Fund of teachers, employees as well. But we are doing very well. We're second in the regarding our liability. So good. That's good. 112%. So that's. Charmaine?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see, what else? About to welcome 2 new students who help with video. One, Taylor Bauer, and the other is Anton. Mania, welcome.
Welcome.
Glad to have you. Okay.
We're gonna start in December. National Honor Society did our fundraiser where we hosted a game night sort of thing at school, and we worked with the kids, little games with them. We do activities. We had like jars filled with cake, and we asked them to guess how many were in there, and they got. And a really good way for us high school to connect with the kids and just do something fun with them as for after they're in the after school program, and it must be a boring after day.
Great.
Speaking of basketball, I'm just going to give the Lady Raiders are currently 10-2. They are in the state for Class S, second in the Triple C. They're looking great. Tristan Oberg was nominated for player of the year for the state, which is great. She won. I don't think there was.
Till next week.
Yeah. Okay.
It goes till Sunday night at midnight.
Okay, yeah, vote if you have it. The gentlemen aren't doing as great. I believe their record is 2-6, I think, but you know, it's good. Sorry. I attended their game on Tuesday against East Windsor. They lost. It was a pretty good game. They came from behind and took them, which was pretty cool. So, yeah.
We had our 46 auditions, which is our musical we're doing this year. Make sure to come see it, March 26th, 28th. And also for the music department, Vocal Motion is going on our next few competitions.
Last week, a professor from the Storrs campus at UConn came to our literature class. Currently, we are writing our inquiry papers based on topics that are found in the Shakespeare play. So he came, he observed the class, he talked to a few students, and then he gave a report, which was great. He loved what he saw. He just said, keep up the great work. And then I'm just going to give an update on college. Students have received most, if not all, of their college acceptances, and a lot have made decisions, and I'm sure we'll be making them in the near future.
And lastly, we're going to do a little promotion for the class of 2020. If you haven't bought a scarf yet, please go purchase a scarf. They're $20 for our class.
I'll have to go purchase. Okay, thank you. Now, Mr.
Public audience first.
Audience, okay. Any public input related to the agenda at this point? If not,
Then we have approval of minutes.
the December 4th and December 5th meetings.
I just had one thing on the, it was a special meeting for December 4th. Just where it says motion to adjourn, vice chair motioned, if you could just change moved instead of motioned.
The other thing, you have January 28th or 25th, 28/19 instead of 2020 on the second set of minutes. This was open. There it is. Okay. Is there a motion?
I'd move acceptance of the consent agenda of minutes for the
December 4th?
December 4th. Sorry, this is just set up a little bit early. December 5th, January 2nd, as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Super report.
So good evening, everybody. It seems like ages since we've met, but it's only been a month, if not. But a lot of things have happened that I do want to mention. The first one you may hear a couple times, but I think mentioning at least a couple times, is that under Sharon's direction, we did just host this year new check-in meetings. They're very informal for new teachers to drop, have conversation about what's going well, what they may need additional support. That will then be later used to plan going forward. So that's a new, thanks to Sharon for organizing that. As you've heard, we are in the 2021 budget planning. Just a reminder that we will have our first budget workshop this Saturday at 9 o'clock in the PD room. That is a public meeting, and at that meeting, you'll hear the budget submitted by all of the building administrators. They will be there to share highlights of their respective as well as the district budget, and then answer any questions you may have. I do want to echo what Nick already said in terms of the Lady Raider basketball team. They are on an incredible run. We hope it continues. If you haven't caught a game, I would encourage you to do so. You can see their schedule on the CIAC website. You can see it on the high school website. You can also see the week as well. And I mentioned something about the boys basketball team. It's almost like their season is what the girls had last year. Those close games they are losing. That was our girls team last year, and the tide's been year. So even though their record might not be what we want it to be, they are worth coming out to see because they are giving it their all. Just a reminder for our board and community members, there is a legislative tomorrow. I know several of us will be in it with members from Bloomfield as well as Windsor. Did attend, I know, the Heritage Day presentation with our history club at the middle school. They made a pitch to of First Selectman Chris Kervick, planner Jen Rodriguez, of some ideas they have going forward. If you haven't marked your calendar for June 6th of this year, please do, because you won't want to miss that. There's more details. They have some additional work to do based on the feedback they received at that presentation. I did attend a first statewide safety meeting. The goal of this is, it originated out of the Connecticut school psychologists, but the intent is that every district will eventually be represented on these monthly meetings. They're held at Fairfield University once a month, and the goal is to look at what are we seeing in each respective districts to be proactive and provide training. So the first attended, I think nearly 80 districts were represented, and I know it will only grow there. Just a shout out to our Office of Partnerships. We'll be hosting the learning table, focusing on money matters and budgeting. The actual title of the Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, 30 to 7, is Money Matters, Making Money Work for You, creating a budget that works. I know there's lots of person and social media posts that have gone out regarding that, so if you can attend, I would encourage you. Dinner will be provided, childcare, and the workshop is free. Thank you. Back in the beginning of January, we had Alumni Day where members of the class of 2019 came back and spoke to our juniors and seniors about what life is like after high school. So again, I want to give a shout out to the counseling office for organizing that and facilitating conversation, and our alumni that came back to be on stage and answer some questions about what transitions like. Later in February, we will specifically recognize 2 students. One of them happens to be here tonight for another reason. I do want to give a shout out to Max Bonito and Relina Loy for being selected as the Outstanding High School Visual and Performing Arts students. And again, we will publicly recognize our family, but you're in the audience. So congratulations. And that concludes my report.
Mrs. Canoyer?
So the last meeting, I was not in attendance because I had the pleasure of representing Mr. Locks with Mr. Swenson at the New England Association of Secondary Schools and Colleges at their annual conference. And so we were able to present and share our work in Windsor Locks, specifically around student-centered, student design learning. We also had 2 teams at the conference, and get to learn from our colleagues from all over New England, a team from the high school and a team from North Elementary School as well. So we had the whole continuum. We had our first board subcommittee on curriculum this evening, so more information to follow with Paige and with Jim. Got to hear me expound on the work that we've been doing with curriculum, and any questions that I'm excited to be able to share information about that they have coming up in the future. So we'll be sharing the minutes at our next meeting. We did have the new teacher support meeting this month. Great input from our teachers, some changes we can make to our process for implementation and for continued support throughout the year. Teachers, avoiding their future here. I've been holding individual meetings with all of our instructional specialists, K through take a look at where they were in the curriculum process, the curriculum mapping process, and to share with them the information for moving our folders into a shared Google folder that Andrew created that will speak directly to teacher web-based portal, so that all of our curricular documents will be easily accessible by all. So those meetings happen. And I've been re-meeting with folks in January to work on, number one, inventory of where they in their writing process. Number 2, where they are in making the transition of their folders to shared folders, so link to the portal. 3, to talk about what their next steps in curriculum writing will be over the course of the spring and into. We've had meetings around identity-informed curriculum that were held with 6th through and social studies grade team as a result of our equity audit that we conducted on our curriculum in the fall. A plan with our consultants from St. Joe's to talk about what that plan was going to look like. We started today with our grade team, looking at lesson plans, infuse and bring into our planning student identity and relevance for them, instruction and in the content. So we're excited about that endeavor. And our in English 6-12 will be working with them as well. We've had assessment meetings held this month to really look at lines around the state assessments coming in spring, make sure that we're aligned and that the communication with families will be taking place. So all of our school-based coordinators, as again IT and WADA and all of the folks who have to collaborate and come together in order to make sure our kids get all of the accommodations that they need and all of the pieces are that testing goes to them. We held an interest meeting with our elementary interventionists, reading teachers, special education teachers, ED teachers, anyone who is helping to support students who may be more support in particular standards, to look at the SPECs we're looking that we analyzed back in the fall to see what progress we were making in some targeted groups of students to move them into a proficient range for the SBAC. So we got some great feedback from our teachers around what's currently being done in the schools to support in being as prepared for the state assessment as possible, but also making those preparations relevant to their learning so that we're not stopping and teaching to the test, but that it's being infused into their instruction when it's relevant to the learning. And we've been meeting at a couple of meetings in the course of this month with the teacher eval and professional development committee around infusing our adult core values that were created leadership this summer, infusing those adult core into our teacher evaluation. So for next month, we're looking forward to some subcommittee work to focus on 3 specific categories of our teacher eval rubric where those components can be easily woven in. And so I won't repeat a lot of the things that Mr. Parkhurst shared already, but it's been a busy month. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Sharon. Now we'll move, excuse me, we'll move to subcommittee reports, and we'll start with the curriculum, let's see, the correspondence first. Paige, do you have any correspondence? No? Okay. Then we go to the curriculum, which you attended the first meeting.
Yeah, so we had our first meeting just before this, and Sharon did an excellent job of kind of giving us a kind of a big picture overview of like all the work that you're doing and teachers are doing wide. It was really impressive, and we got to see kind of the start of sort of like a curriculum hub, how they're mapping, the lesson templates they're using, and it was exciting to see kind of the rigor they're aiming at and how they're aligning it. Like you gave a great example about organelles and how we can teach about organelles or we can use that as a vehicle to teach bigger things. So it was great, and looking forward to the next one.
Great, thank you. We didn't have policy and finance meetings, so we'll wait till next month for those reports. And any other standing committees? I don't think there's anything. Business? Excuse me. Donation?
Sure. So we were nominated, actually I should say, High School was nominated by Mr. Patel of Jay's Mobile for an educational grant. Basically, this is a grant that provides funding in the area of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we were actually accepted for that grant of $500, so the donation will be accepted by the high school to be put toward the robotics program. So we're looking for you to make a motion to accept that donation.
Is there a motion to accept the donation?
I move that the
Five.
Board of Education accept the Educational Alliance grant donation from ExxonMobil in the amount of $500, with sincere thanks and great appreciation to Mr. Patel from Jay's Mobile for the nomination of Windsor Locks High School.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay. Grant award?
Yes, so it must be the night for grants for Windsor Locks High School because we have another one. And I know we have representatives here from the theater department as well as People's Bank, who is here to talk about a grant that we are the recipients of in the amount of $3,700 to support our theater club. So Ms. Schober and students, I'm not sure if you want to come and talk about the grant, and I know we have Patty here from People's Bank who will formally present the grant to Ms. Schober and her students.
I'm Judy Schober, and these are our theater club here. Okay. So I've been trying in the past few years raise the level of the theater program and just try to give the students the most professional pre-college experience in theater. So we asked for to try to upgrade the equipment on the stage, and one light that you hang scenery, fly in different scenes. They cost about $3,500 to $4,000. So it's a big budget item for us to try to fund. So we just received a beautiful, generous donation.
Good evening. I'm Patty Rabbit. I'm the Windsor Locks Banking Center Manager of People's Bank, and I'm so happy to be here tonight. On behalf of People's Bank, it is my absolute pleasure to present to you this check for $3,700 to support the theater club, the Windsor Locks Public Schools. Many students will benefit. So much. Our pleasure.
One requirement, though, make sure you mark your calendar for 42nd Street. Have to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Rabbit has been very active in the school when her daughter was here, I remember. So, and she's very,
A rep for 2 years.
yep, and she was very supportive, always has been of any fundraising.
Want a motion?
Motion?
I move the Board of Education accept the People's Bank Community Care Grant with sincere thanks and great appreciation for the nomination of Windsor Locks High School.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. Now the Zen Garden presentation.
So continuing along the line a little bit, I do want to invite our teachers and the students. So Amanda Arnold and Tracy Hunt, if you recall, back earlier this year, we had talked to you about a grant that they had applied for with their students to kind of develop and organize a Zen garden to support social-emotional learning here at the high school. So tonight, they have a pretty extensive amount of work for their students, both in collaboration with the town planner. So I think that you will hear a lot about the collaboration that's going on between life experience. When you talk, Paige, about kind of Sharon's experience in curriculum, I think this will bring it full circle of what application of that looks like. Without further ado, I'm going to invite Amanda Arnold and Tracy Shannon Deshays to speak to you and share some highlights of their work and their plans going forward.
So we're actually going to let Shannon, student perspective, apparently.
Because she always does such a good job, right?
Screen.
So the original idea was presented to us during our Raider Block time, and we were going to work with Ms. Brennan, Ms. Arnold's Raider Block to create a Zen garden of sorts in the courtyard. So given this little sketch, like the overview of what the courtyard looks like. Each with putting in what we thought was most effective in, calming students down and like a nice relaxed space for students. So some people have ideas of adding like a nice for like teachers and do lessons like in certain areas like sand pit and such. Like we each were given one and put in what we thought would be most effective. Like some people even thought about putting a pool out there, like a nice outdoor pool. We didn't shoot any ideas down. You know what? Whatever you think will help you learn best. So like fill that area with sand and like a nice little garden. Yep, there it goes. Like a nice little cafe area we also thought about doing, but like with pastry, like lemonade, a nice incentive for students. It's fun since asking where his desk is going. And you know what? We'll work it in. Did your class do this too? Or is that when we split? That's so we each, even before we did the drawings, we all got together with a town planner. Yep. And a landscape architect we went out there into the actual space and we were throwing ideas out with them, and it was just a nice learning experience. We all got see how many different ideas we have. Questions, concerns, comments?
So does work start on it? Or is it, the actual?
So as of right now, we obviously can't get outside, but the background work has already started. The students have already gathered into different teams, a team of students who want to handle the finances to make sure that what we're purchasing is cost effective and wild to put out there. We have a team that is what we call the work, in charge of building and putting together things and actually helping do some of the labor once we can get outside. And so they've kind of split up into these groups and they're working independently among these groups. The goal is once the weather breaks, probably beginning of April, given the area is prepped and ready for us, we can get out there and actually start implementing what these students have designed and come up with.
Is this something that would change over time? For instance, during the winter, what do you have to do, cover it up, or?
We have ideas, so Jen has been helpful and our landscape architects. So they've been giving us some really environmentally friendly ideas because one of the concerns was, are students only going to be able to use it in the fall and the spring? What happens in all of our snow months? So we have ideas that could be put into place, but we haven't made any concrete decisions yet. So with this first year, we're trying to figure out what can we do with the money that we've been given this year, but it is going to be a growing process. And years, we're worried, is this going to be a one thing, one and nobody's going to do it? But Ms. Hunt and I are having, this is going to be an ongoing Raider Block activity every year because this is going to be our community project.
So, and I do want to just say we need to give a great thanks to the Lions Club because they really put forth the effort and they actually did the grant on behalf because they were able and went through that whole process for us so that we could then use this money to turn it into a usable space for all the students and teachers to get something back for. So without them, it wouldn't have been possible. So I just want to make sure that they get the credit for their role in it too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? No?
I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. It'll be really nice. Okay, the school calendar?
Sure. So you have in your packet the proposed 2021 school calendar, and just a couple of things I want to mention in terms of both the process and a couple items of note on the calendar. Process, we did get input from the Teachers Association leadership team, as well as our building, our district-wide leadership team, both in terms of stuff. If you look at the calendar, you'll notice one of the challenges we had is that Labor Day is actually quite late in 2021. it is on September 7th, which basically means kind of looking at if you move the first day of school forward 2 months, you're up against a later ending date in June. So where we landed was that we would start school on Monday, August 31st, which is a Monday. We would go that full week, so I do want to mention that the first week is a full week of school, which is a little bit different than what people may be accustomed to. But then that falls right into a long Labor Day weekend. I know there has been a request for the 2021 Board of Ed meetings, which are not on here. We will do that at our February meeting, and then we'll add them to the calendar so they are there. You will note that there's a slight change in the February mini break. In the past, it's been Monday and Tuesday. We're proposing that it's Friday and Monday, Monday being the holiday. And then you will see that the last day of school based on this proposed calendar would be Friday, June 11th. And just a reminder for the class of 2021, that can be a set graduation date regardless of snow days. So that's up to the board and when we set that as we move forward. There are 2 PD days still, full PD days during the school year. One is on November 3rd and the other one on March 15th. So that is there, and I'll take any questions that you may have regarding the calendar.
Well, just to note, you have pre-K and kindergarten starting a different day, correct?
They do, yes. Kindergarten's first day is first week. They would start on Wednesday, and pre-K would start on Thursday.
Yeah. Very good. Any questions about the calendar?
Accepting the calendar tonight is not setting the graduation date.
No.
Correct.
That'll be a separate
That would be
motion.
a separate.
Yep.
Was there a specific reason for changing the Monday, Tuesday to a Friday, Monday?
No, I think it was just general feedback that we threw it out there as ideas, and people kind of liked the idea. You know, it gives you, what the major difference it does is it gives you 2 4-day weeks instead of a 5-day week and then a 3-day week.
Sure.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
I move that the board accept the proposed 2021 school calendar as presented.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
The graduation date, we want to wait and set it later. Okay. Okay. Introduction of district-wide family.
Sure, and I know some of you heard about this at the curriculum meeting, but I'm going to ask Jessie to come and share a little bit about, you had heard, and I believe it was toward either the end of last year or the beginning of this year, we had representation here from CREC talking about the Family Partnership Grant. It's a 2-year commitment. Well, Jessie's hard work has paid off because we now have school-based teams in action at all of our schools, and I won't steal her thunder. I'll let her kind of share what's being done and what the plan is forward, getting us to the Board of Ed meeting in May, which will be an important date.
And I don't remember, but. 14, thank you. Okay. So as part of our 2-year work, the 2 years of work with CREC, let me back up just to add a little bit to what Mr. Parker said. We signed on with CREC for a 2-year program or project, which is called the Connecticut Family Partnership Project, and which is part of a $5 million grant that CREC got to set up a statewide family engagement center. What our component of the grant does is that we are looking to enhance our family school partnership work throughout the district. And what we've done with each individual school is that now they have family school partnership teams, which are comprised of families, and by families I mean parents, guardians, significant caregivers. In addition to folks, we also have teachers, and also if there's any community members who are interested in joining, they are welcome to. The meetings are posted on our district calendar. These are meetings that are completely open to all interested persons. So what are we doing with these teams? We are coming up with a definition as to what we in Windsor Locks do with regard to family school partnership work. So right now we have no guiding star, we have no this is how we see family school partnership work. So it's the teams who are coming up with a definition and guidelines essentially for the work of family school partnerships. And they're all working individually right now, and then they're eventually going to come together, I believe in April, and then they're going to meld their definitions into one, along with guidelines. And the goal is to present it on May 14th to you all, and hopefully you'll approve it, and you'll be like, yes, this is amazing work. And then we'll go forward from there. But in case there are revisions, we have a meeting set in June to go back and revise. Any questions?
Good. And it's a 2-year grant.
It is a 2-year grant. We're in our first year now. We don't actually get any money. We get in-kind contribution trainings, really helpful. And I've been paired with a coach who's just kind of supporting my efforts in this work. And so next year it will look a little bit different. But this year I really wanted to get a definition, because without this kind of like framework, how do we know what, how do we know that we're doing it well if we don't have the outline of it?
So when you talk about community members who might want to be involved, so are you looking for business community? Are you looking for charitable community? What?
Anyone, it's community members are just those who aren't parents or guardians of anyone in the school, and also not teachers, but just if person XYZ on ABC to join, as long as that's in Windsor Locks, they can. So.
But are you looking to make those types of connections, like Lions Club? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. What I'm getting at is that they don't have, there's no monetary, or they're not being a sponsor of anything. We actually want them to attend the meetings and be part of the process of definition and framework.
Do you have members as well?
I'm going to refrain from having board members, because
Okay.
this is really supposed to be more of like grassroots, like from the bottom up, and like the school-based teams will, or family school partners will be presenting it to. We have a district level team, and so before it comes to in front of the board. So,
Good.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you asking. Well,
I wasn't sure if any of the board members wanted to attend.
No, in
Okay,
no offense.
that's fine.
So, yeah.
We understand. But we can bring it up to the community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
It is part of, just so you know, it is, I know Jesse's posting it on social media, but it is also part of next week's Education Everywhere. There's a video segment regarding it that will go out to everybody, including the community.
Speaking of that, I really enjoy every episode that you've put out.
Good, thank you. Well, it's a team effort.
Team
It's
effort,
not
I know.
just me.
And it's great. It's great.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the community is, because they're educated on what's going on in the school system, and that's been absent. That's a good part of your program, to keep the community involved and educated.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, now we're going to go into the district-wide presentation.
So as we do every month, we want to give you an update on our progress goals. Caution you, we're going to go through this piece, and when I get into some of the academic piece, I'll mention this again, but just keep in mind, as I've said before, the academic piece is snippets of standards and progress that our students are making from a pre-assessment to a post-assessment. There are places where you will still not see a post-assessment, and the reason for that is because we have worked really hard to coordinate with our teachers, where does this best align within the curriculum? We're not testing just for testing's sake. We're making it align to what's happening in the classroom every single day. So when we look at our attendance, our chronic absenteeism data, and this is cumulative. You don't add from one month to the next. This is where we are at this moment in time. So if you look at the target for North Street School by the end of this school year was to be under 10%. We've seen this when we got through through most of January, 9.2. You're going to see that there is an increase across the board. As many of you know that we're a lot of major this season. We also, in the calendar, we came back on a Thursday and Friday. So you can imagine what that, it wasn't as bad as we anticipated, but we did have some high absenteeism. And again, this is, the state's definition is excused and unexcused, so it's all clumped together. However, if you look at the very last column across the board at every single school, compared to where we were last year at this point in time, North Street School last January was at 17.6% of their population chronically absent. We are currently at 9.2, almost half. If you look at South, last year was 0.9, they're currently at 5.9. The middle school was at 12.5, 8.9, and the high school was nearing 20% last year. They're at 14%. So again, huge kudos goes out to the teams at each building, the follow-up that's happening, and I do want to mention a couple things, and I don't expect you to read this. In partnership with the Connecticut State Department Office of Family Engagement, we have a lot of guiding charts to help us to identify what are some of our practices in place that maybe we can tweak a little bit and move from a low impact to a moderate or a high impact. So some of the things that we is really looking at what's that personal communication. So if you look to the far right, this is just a piece of that chart pulled out, that at a low impact, we would just send flyers home, encouraging them through the back, excuse me, through backpacks for the child to be present. If you look to the far left, it's really looking at each family with students that are chronically absent, having information. Those are those letters shared, providing those to you. Another piece that we are just beginning, thank you, is looking at that ongoing outreach, looking personal phone calls. We know that relationships are the number one key in everything that we do, and it's no different with absenteeism. So we have some teachers that are starting to make connections through phone calls and continuing that relationship, hoping absenteeism even more. So again, huge efforts at the building level, and you can see the effects of that in terms of our progress. I'll stop there for any questions regarding absenteeism before I get into the academic piece.
So are these things that we're doing now?
They are. Yes, they are. Mm-hmm. All right, when we start to look at academics, so are we in terms of that's being made? So if you look, this shows 6th grade, some pre and post assessment data. The first one is looking at if you look at the blueprint of our state assessment, mathematic expression and equations are critically important across the board, especially grade 6, along with math ratio and proportions. So those, the pre-assessment, you can clearly see, had approximately 0, but actually we had 0% 6th graders above the expected level. When instruction occurred and then we gave a post-assessment, we saw 43% of our students in grade 6 above the expected level. So you can see the huge growth. I won't read you every single chart. If you look at them in clumps, you can see our blue we're hoping is decreasing. The red is decreasing, orange is getting larger, depending on at how are we growing yellow, that percentage of our students that are moving above the expected level. You can see it for math here. You can also see the fifth one down. There is only a pretest right now for ELA brief rights, but what's really important is what's happening from this information in the classroom. The teachers are using it to give target specific to students, and when you talk to students, you may have seen a segment that Sharon did on Education Everywhere about the interim assessment. You can hear students talking about how they are owning the learning, what they're getting from this. Our teachers as well are seeing the benefits of this. When you look at grade 7, again, you can see that yellow growing from pre-test to post-test, which is what we want. However, the series here that you're looking at is just pre-test. Again, when I mentioned at the beginning, looking at where it does it best align in our curriculum to study, really important, not testing here just for testing's sake. The last bars do have a pre and post assessment, so that's a good comparison, where you can see that we, in the pre-test, had 13% of our students above the expected level, and 25%. And again, just a word of caution, snippets of pieces that make up the SBAC assessment. When you look at grade 8, those are all pre-assessments. So again, where are we starting, and then how do we grow from there? When we move into the high school, again, you can see some pre and post test cycles. How are we measuring the growth there? If you look at the very first 2 bars, you can see that in a pre-assessment in ELA, almost 95% of our students are below where we wanted them to be. After targeted instruction and feedback, 38% of students moved up into that percentage of near where we at or near where we want them to be. Again, some incredible. I think it speaks volumes about what Nick mentioned at the beginning, that when we often don't know the great things that are happening, but when somebody from the outside comes in and looks and watches, it's reassuring and validating of the great work that our students and our staff are doing. Some more grade 9 data. This happens to be in the area of mathematics. Again, you can see what's really interesting is if you look at the 3rd and 4th lines, math psych. Again, almost 97% of students in grade 10 below where we wanted them to be. After targeted instruction and a post-assessment, almost 40% of them moving up to above the expected. Here again, this is in the area of science. We have some pre, the post has not occurred yet. The bottom 2, you can see a pre and post, again, looking at growth there. So I will stop there and answer any questions you may have on progress to date.
For those lines in which you have a pre and a post, is there a standard period of time between the pre and the post, or does it vary?
Sharon, do you want to?
Really depends on, so teachers have been given the autonomy to, as Mr. Parker said, to give the assessment when it fits the curriculum. And this is the first year with the IABs. So the initial plan that was rolled out by leadership in the fall was that every teacher to give two assessments. Each of those assessments had to have a pre and a post test. So it was really, where does it align with the curriculum? And the idea would be, as the pre prior to instruction, at the end of the year, they would give the next assessment. And it really would depend on how long the unit would take to implement.
And the difference between the blue, the red, and the yellow, what is it? What numbers do they have to hit to reach those blocks? You know, what does percent below mean? Below what percentage?
So it would be, it would be below it's the same comparison that SBAC's using. So they have their algorithm for, hitting a certain target number that would represent scoring at or below that would be a category. So and every test is different. So it would depend on the assessment that they're taking.
Yeah, and
the state sets those.
This starts to get into statistics, so maybe Nick can help us or somebody else, Dennis maybe. But they get an actual scale, which is kind of what we're talking about, is algorithmed into factoring the level of the depth of knowledge of the types of questions that are being asked on the assessment. And they have different weights in terms of how they count and how those calculate. But what it do, where these interim blocks, the IABs, as Sharon mentioned, they clump our students' scores into 3 kind of broad buckets: percentage below, near, which is pretty far-reaching, a pretty wide span, and then percentage above. The thing to keep in mind is that when we go and give the actual SBAC test, we're into 4 buckets, but within those 4 buckets, they are high and a low. So technically, there are 8 buckets when you look at the SBAC testing. So is it an exact comparison? If a child is performing here, that they're going to perform here? It's not exact science. Plus, keep in mind, as I mentioned, it's a snippet of standard larger test that's expected. We are targeting the areas that have the broadest potential for increasing our students' performance, but it is just one targeted area in a larger assessment.
Who performs the exams?
tied or measured, I don't even know who
It's the-
Airsure, whoever is the
Well,
vendor.
AIR is the,
uh,
although they just changed their name, so.
Whoever is the vendor that provides the tests through the State Department of Education.
Oh,
It's not, I don't count that.
okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Look forward to dates of them. Sorry, I had a coughing jack.
Me too.
Okay. Let's see, progress, budget time, budget transfers.
So I'm going to turn it over to Charmaine to walk you
Charmaine.
through a multi-page document of transfers. And I just want to preface this by saying, predicated on going into our workshop on Saturday, making sure that we have good comparisons in terms of where actual expenditures were and need to be, what lines are coming out of. So on the surface, it's going to look like a lot of transfers, but it's really kind of setting you up for a true comparison when we look at 1920 to proposed 2021 budget.
Okay.
So as we've done in the past, actually, I will step back to sort of top of what Ms. Parkhurst just spoke of as far as truing it up for the budget workshop. We're having sort of a, I guess, a timing challenge from the standpoint that these items that you have in this document today is generally presented to the Finance Subcommittee so that we go through each one. So you're going to walk me all together, particularly. Usually it would be done during the Finance Subcommittee, then presented to the Board of Ed. But because we have not met in December until February, but our budget workshop is Saturday, I'm trying to sort of make the cart work behind, in front of the horse. So if you will, I'll go through each one. In the past, what we've done is we've gone through each item and then either ask questions or challenge a particular item, voted on the bulk with or without excluding any particular item. Or if you like to vote one by one, we can do that. So whatever the board's pleasure is, I'm more than happy to support. So shall we begin?
Yep.
Okay. So again, just reiterating what Mr. Parkhurst indicated, all of this is a net neutral. I always like to say that. It's net neutral. So for all these budget transfers we're looking at on these pages. So the first item is the PMA, or Pine Meadow, a social worker replaced a Pine Meadow teacher. So I would defer to Mr. Parkhurst and as to why and how that happened. I'm just the money lady. But since those particular individuals are different as far as the state reporting is concerned, I needed to ensure that since these people were recently hired, that they are being applied to account lines that are reflective of what their title, role, and certification is. Okay? So the PMA social worker salary line was increased by the dollar amount of the individual who replaced the teacher. So we simply move the money from the teacher line to the social worker line, because that's what that person is and does. For number 2, social worker replaced a psychologist. Similar situation, so instead of a teacher salary, we're moving a psychologist salary line to the social worker line.
And that's a district one instead of any particular.
That is a district.
It looks like district, it's special services. So it reports through Josh's area. Okay? Any other questions? So the next one, Pine Meadows sped teacher budget funding. So we're looking at it in, it says move part of unused psychologist salary funding to PMA sped teacher salary account. So we have a PMA teacher who is, needs to be funded from the psychologist salary. So the PMA sped teacher is more expensive and we needed to backfill the dollar amount, and we were able to get that from the psychologist salary in order to fund that teacher. So this is the balance of that move. Okay, that's the first balance. The next one, item number 4, is the PMA sped teacher budget funding. So this is part 2. This is the big dollar amount. There's the PMA sped teacher salary of $622, and now is being funded from the sped teacher salary. So it's being cobbled together, and again, these are still sped teachers. The difference in the PMA sped teacher and the sped teacher salary is simply that it's Pine Meadow. And that is for us, so that we have a better sense for whether or not the population or the demographics within Pine Meadow is being supported by special education teachers versus or general education teachers. Because special education, it doesn't matter where they are. The state wants to know how much we're spending on special education, but we just spiked it out even further within our district, so we understand how those folks are being serviced over there. Does that make sense? Okay. The PMA tutor monies are on an incorrect account line. This goes back to what I was about special general ed. So the original thing was on a education line. Those accounts, I just want to insert this, those accounts will continue to stay based off of how the demographics of Pine Meadow shift and change. Because a small population, that's why we have the money, what feels like every year, because if the demographics change, then they pull out, meaning if there are students there who do not need special education support, then we do not charge special education expenditures to that environment. Because we have to report very explicitly on special education expenditures. So if we are spending special education expenditures on Pine Meadow, it needs to be reported. If there are students there who don't need special education support, then we need to reallocate that teacher expenditure. So you might see this again next year, depending on the demographics of Pine Meadow. Is that fair?
Thanks for the explanation. Yep.
Okay, so that's tutor. Again, it's just a complete wash, moving from special education to general education. Number 6. So this is the truing up, if you will, of one individual who's apparently multi-talented. So, individual who works under Josh Robinson, she is having her time, talents allocated to multiple areas. So 0.4 FTE, this is just one person, so we're reallocating her time, costs associated with that time in accordance with what it's actually doing in order for us to be compliant and so to speak, in our reporting, okay? As you can see, this individual is a psychologist. So 0.4, the budget monies for the RISE psychologist, and what is on an incorrect line, based off of the work that she's doing now. So the money must have been moved to correct the salary line. So that represents from the director of services assistant, because that's the human being who, that's the title of that individual, where the lion's share of her salary is. We're going to move 0.4 of her FTE, or the $28,000, $28,648, from that line to a RISE psychologist line.
So if you looked at the budget and looked at the Director of Special Services, you're not going to see the full salary paid to that person, because now part of it will be put under RISE.
You're going to see, based off of what Robinson has declared is what she does. So based off of what she does, So we've gone through extensive discussion, I would say, about what this does. And the reason why I'm stressing this is because, A, she's a psychologist, and the state looks at the psychology, social work, OT, PT, speech, all of that,
Specialist.
specialists. They look at it differently than they look at a teacher. So that's number one. Number two, she is doing specific blocks of work for to support him in some of the reporting that he needs to do. But he has declared that an allocation of time is really much less than, it's not right to make her whole in that role, because then we cannot declare the balance of the time that she's rise for special education support for, I believe she's going to PMA for PMA support. So it's, and I'm not somebody who's interested in carving up a person when it comes to FTEs, but in her particular case, it makes sense because she's a unique individual doing some very unique things. So when you look at that, when you look at the budget, you, for the coming work, you will see that it says Director of Special Services Assistant, and the dollar amount is probably, what, 0.4? 0.4 of her salary. It's gonna be low.
Yeah.
Nope, I haven't gotten to the next point two.
You just said Director of Special Services Assistant.
Right.
Yeah, but she hasn't gotten to the
I've,
rest.
I've only done 0.4. There's a 0.2. So,
She currently part,
no, that's what I'm
she's
saying.
currently full-time.
She's a one FTE, but she's being divided into three parts.
But if you look at the line for Director of Services,
You will see, when you get that budget worksheet, you will see 0.4.
But then we'll
0.4
see
times 3 is-
0.6.
Yes,
Okay. I just wanted to make sure her hours weren't being cut,
No.
or if they were,
They're not.
let us know.
but
Okay.
you're moving Director of Special Services a point FTE to rise psychologist.
She was a .8,
she was a point.
so she's .4 there, and then she's still a .4 with the Director of Special Services.
Okay, that's why I wasn't
Thank
adding
you.
up.
I'm like, HR, you're sitting there.
In response to Paige's question, she's .4 Director of Special Services Assistant for RISE Psych to PMA Psych.
Okay.
And those, therefore, I didn't do a request for a movement of 4 of Director of Special Services because it's already there. I'm just moving out. I'm going to leave .4 in Director of Special Services. We're going to move .4 to RISE Psychologist and .2, that's number 7, to PMA Psychologist. Does that make sense? I know it's confusing.
Well, it says teacher salary. The transfers from teacher salary.
Because she was .8, so let's rewind. So in September, when everybody came back to school, for those of us who don't get summer off, we were waiting for them. So in September, when she came back to school, operating off of last year's budget as .8, doing assistant work for him. And, actually, no, she was operating as a full assistant. And we needed to move her to .8 as his assistant and .2 as a teacher, because she taught a class.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
She taught a
yeah.
class, I remember. She taught a class. So she was
Okay.
.8 as the assistant and taught a class, and .2, or however many classes were required, and .2. So not only caucusing with on what exactly she was doing after our audit with Bloom Shapiro, who said, listen, if she's a psychologist, that's okay if she's teaching us, but she's certified as a psychologist. And in this district, the psychologist of the teachers' bargaining agreement. So when these accounts were established 15 years ago, it was based off of that fact. And so I spent a great deal of time with Bloom Shapiro on this because they didn't even realize that those roles were part of the teacher's bargaining unit agreement, which is the genesis for how these accounts were established. So now that we've evolved, there's new state statute, there's new, federal statute, we need to be able to spike it out so we can report it accordingly. When I brought that to Josh's attention, he said, okay, truth be told, she's doing this work and there, and so we made it right. So we've gone over this, round robin multiple times.
Okay.
So,
I wondered why the teacher salary was here, but she taught, so, okay.
She can't just be considered like 0.6 psychologist district level? Like it has to be broken out, Pine Meadow and Rise? Like it can't just
So
be.
it's broken out for Pine Meadow so that in case they had to separate the budget out to know how much is being spent at Pine Meadow, they have a separate line just for Pine Meadow. We just opened up that line.
right. And the second part of that commentary is RISE is our 100% special education program. So all of those, when we go to do the report, capture all of those expenditures because the state knows it as a special education program. So automatically those expenditures qualify. So I'm not interested in like over reporting expenditures for special education that are not true. So
it sounds like Josh found someone like himself who wears many different hats.
apparently, yeah. Any additional questions on that one? So RISE, number 8, is dues and fees, expense budget monies on incorrect account line, move the budget monies to correct expense line. So $6,841 on the RISE tuitions line represents, in essence, the costs associated for specific membership for students to participate in certain programs. So YMCA, is one of them, and then the litany of internships, like life skills, practical experience programs. That's what that represents. That's not tuition. So once I had a better understanding of what that was, because tuition is one of those line items that the state is zeroing in on as well. So it's not tuition. So I don't want to be reporting tuition, so we're making that move. Okay? Again, net neutral. PMA para educator. So here it's neutral transition. This goes back to what I was just saying about making sure we're clear on what's happening at Pine Meadow. The original account was a regular or general education account. This particular set of circumstances now requires that a para be supporting special education needs. So really a shift from a general ed account to a education account.
But they're both PMA already.
Yeah, they're both PMA.
How many people is this?
One para.
54,000?
That's more than
I'm sorry, it's 2 paras. It's like 20, it's 2 paras, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions? So that was all Josh. So page, now there's everybody else. So the high school has paid for most of the databases for the school year. This is a request for the Library Media Center. So the request to transfer some of the savings to the Library Media Center supply line is noted below. So high school students will be better by expanding the space to take more students. I have the principal here in the event that you have any questions regarding. So they are simply asking that we move periodicals to the supply line. It's a net neutral shift.
And just to be sure, we don't have any freezes or anything at this point in time that we need to hold.
I was on.
And overall, we're not freezing anything
Oh,
for
no,
supervisory
not
at
yet.
this point.
Not yet.
Well, if we're transferring money.
The administrators know. I pull the halt in April. That's their target. But if I find sooner, they hear from me. I can go forward. On number 11, is to move, and again, my favorite, to move 2 EDEY teachers' budget salary lines to correct teacher salary account lines, okay? So it's all the middle school teachers. I need some help from curriculum as to what they think, but they need to be in the EDEY line because they were applied to the regular teacher line. I'm not on what they do. Just know that they need to be allocated in the right line for what they're designated as.
Maybe what's the difference? Lines?
One is EDEY and one is just a regular teacher.
Okay. So these folks were always EDEY. The reason they ended up in the regular salary.
The wrong line.
How many EDEY teachers are at middle? Just 2.
2.
So number 12, okay, this one you see every year, primary mental health, and you're going to continue to see it. So we usually do it at the end of the year after, the North Street principal has pushed the limit. This thing hasn't been reallocated. I'm proactive. I want to get it before he starts spending against these lines. So the primary mental health grant requires that we match a minimum of $5,000 against the money that they're giving us. Okay? So we always just plunk $5,000 on a literal account line that says primary mental health for $5,000. You're going to see that on Saturday. Okay? It's going to be a fat $5,000 because then it goes through the whole grant process and they say yes, no, maybe so. They tell Jeff what he can and cannot spend. Still require them to cough up $5,000 to support something somehow in accordance with primary mental health. Does that make sense? So what we're doing is now getting the monies against the lines that he needs to spend against. He was already approved the grant. And based off of the approval of the grant, they told him how to spend certain pieces of their money. So we each the monies that they're asking him to spend against these respective lines. So from the primary mental health local match, that is a salary account line, okay? So a portion of a teacher's salary, or not a teacher, but a support salary, is going to be paid out of that line. That portion is $50 okay? So that's why you see that we're only taking $3,465 because we need to leave the $1,535 there to supplement salaries. The rest of it goes to that goes against supplies, instructional supplies, $150, tech instructional software $1,480, and just other supplies for $935, based off of how they designate what other supplies are. So again, it's a net wash.
We don't have to move $1,535 to salary.
No, because the primary mental health account is a salary account, so we just leave it there. Okay. Next, building and grounds transfers. So to correctly align budgets with account spending. So, Steve and myself, Steve Mills and myself have worked out, figuring out what needs to be allocated where. So we're cleaning it up because when you all that budget, you will see the cleaned up, like so that it's very plainly laid out what he's charging against. So for the building and grounds section, we have bench training. It used to be called something else. A couple of predecessors ago, it was called asbestos training, etc. I'm not good on etc. or miscellaneous. So I dug into these accounts, and that's why you see new account numbers sprouting up. So it was originally designed as a maintenance training account. That's what the account coding stipulates. So we're moving $5,000 out of that account and putting it into safety-related account. So that's items that he actually has contracts for as it relates to, what is it, the SBS sheets? Thank you. So these are the things, you know, he's required to have in place. He has contracts in place that it's year. We do this year over year. It shouldn't be in a training account. That's misleading.
So safety-related materials?
It's the material safety data sheets.
Data
That
sheets.
you have to have on record for any chemicals or substances that you have in the building.
They do an inventory, they do an on-site inventory.
Okay. And then there's, take another $2,600 from that line and apply it to something called uniforms. Uniforms was an account that's existed in this district for as long as I can go back in the system, and wasn't really used. But uniforms basically is the shoe allowance and things like that that are afforded to our custodians, especially those with trade licenses, that they require. It's in their union contract. So how about we put it on a line so everybody knows what that is? Okay, so that one's just another direct transfer. So that's those 13 items. Okay? So if there's anybody have any additional questions on any one of those lines?
No? Anybody? No?
Okay. I know it's super exciting and sexy, but it's money. So.
You answered our questions as we went along, so, good.
Do you want a motion now?
Yes, please.
I move to accept the budget transfers for the above 13 items to the respective accounts and their correlated amounts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so
Okay.
the next item beneath that does not require a motion, is simply a notice. So you've, even my predecessor, we've come to you at the, well, I try to come to you before the very end of the year. My predecessor has, done it a little later. But the long and the short of it is that the food service fund is a federal fund. It cannot be negative, technically ever. It definitely can't be negative. It has to be either broke even or in a positive by June 30th. So, as you all know, we are CEP and we operate off of the claims reimbursements that come from the state. In the past, before we became CEP, we had cash flow. So we just had a small population of claims that were, small population of student purchases or student meals that were claims related, and then everything else was being paid, so we had cash flow at the time of purchase. So now, we're always 2 to 2.5 months behind getting our money from the state. So, as you recall last year, I had to come to you and simply notify you that the money needed to be transferred to make the federal fund whole. I'm notifying you that I can't pay my food service fund bills with my current cash flow. So I need to take $95,000 from special revenues, not the general fund, from special revenues in order for us to pay our bills. Because we're at a negative in the food service. Oh, we're not in good standing with the food service fund. I don't want to say negative. So I just need to be able to pay the bills in accordance with the requirements for the food service fund.
But the funds will come in from the state.
They will. We will have a very robust conversation on Saturday regarding, and the finance subcommittee and I have had this discussion before, where the labor costs associated with the respective cafeterias are higher than what is contracted to be paid for out of the food service fund. And there's no offset, which is why we continue to have these issues. So, we can deliberate, debate, have civil discourse on that
On Saturday.
on Saturday.
Okay.
Okay? So, that is, I think I have something else. Yes.
Yes, you have the,
Okay, one of your favorites.
Yes, my favorite.
Madam
The
Chair.
storage. The
And
storage.
there's a typo in this document, but I didn't even catch it until I opened up this document. So, this is a view of the updated storage unit agreement. If you all recall, the Windsor Locks Public Schools Board of Education approved the purchase of the storage unit last spring. From the task list, if you all, we went through all those respective lines and were able to use the excess funds that special revenue betterment of the district. The cost of the unit that originally asked your approval is now significantly higher. So the original cost was estimated at $86,406. The revised cost is now a total of $115,450, which includes, so I want to be clear. That should say $106,000 for the building and the original estimate was a little over $86,000 based off of the estimator not really understanding kind of what was happening with the land. Again, that was done in February. I'm sure really couldn't take a real good assessment of what the soil was going to require, nor did it include the site work. So when Steve went to go move this exercise along, he knows that he needs significant funding. That's $8,000 for work. And Steve can speak to what site work looks like if you need an explanation of that, and another $150 for removal of whatever's in there. We have a high of units back there. So the business office is requesting that the board approve the adjusted cost of the storage units. And again, Steve and I have put our noggins together. He's been very vigilant about the other items on the list, the end of year task list, and we found some cost savings, so we can afford it based off of those original monies. But committed to May not purchase anything that was over the dollar amount that you all had approved. So here we are.
Well, it makes sense that we didn't know at the time what the cost was going to be. The ground unfroze.
Are there things not being bought that were on the list that was approved?
No, they're bought. They're bought.
Everything's been bought.
There's the storage units that are outstanding, and then there are other things that are pending, waiting for the weather. Like we saved a significant amount of money on the playground. So that was $150,000 for the playground, $10,000 a sidewalk. I think $20 for the fence and $10,000 for the sidewalk. So that puts us at $100,000. We are coming in at less than $150,000. And then there's a little smaller savings throughout. So we found an alternative. The original estimate that we were operating off of, the original quotes, the installation is substantial. And so we went to work to finding, and I know it was kind of winning over at North, but it was in agreement that the installation costs were insane for the pieces that we considered within our budget for some of the vendors that we were looking at. He kept looking, and he was able to find worked with alternative installers and financially for that new relationship. So the proposal is out with the with council, and should you approve it, then we can go ahead and sign and get the parts, put the order in for the actual elements of the playground, and as soon as the weather permits, they can go ahead and break ground.
Well, I just want to stay on topic. So first, right now, we're talking
It's a
about
storage.
the storage base. Perhaps it would be useful an update to the end of your task list, and maybe have a column for what the actual cost came in and then the difference, and then maybe we know. stand. So, do you want to deal with the storage base?
Yeah.
Should
We
we
need-
wait till we get the,
Any questions on the storage base?
well, should we wait till we get that we just said of the updated numbers? Vote on that on Saturday.
I feel comfortable if Charmaine is telling us that the funds are.
Yeah, I do too.
The only thing I would say, you wouldn't be able to change the agenda for Saturday, so this would, if you don't do this, you would have to wait until February 13th, I think is the next board meeting. The agenda's already for Saturday.
And on Saturday, you can explain it further? If we accept it here?
Sure, I mean, if you like, I mean, Steve, what's the earliest in your mind that they can actually go to work on this?
According to him, he can,
Oh,
especially with this winter.
I actually don't have an opinion one way or the other.
Is there a motion?
I would move that grant the superintendent or his designee the authority to purchase six bay storage unit and construction services for the cost of $150,450.
Is there- I'll second. Motion?
I would like to see the list that says where we stand on all of those things.
So we should table this.
Yeah, we have to table it until February 13th, so he can't start until that time,
At least that time.
at least that time. And we can't add it to the agenda as an agenda item at the
How
board
much time
meeting.
do we need before the meeting? We need 24 hours, don't we? So change tomorrow morning? Does that give us adequate time?
Yes, we could do that, yes, and repost a new agenda.
You just got to do it by 9 o'clock.
Well, before noon, because town hall closes early on Fridays.
Well, yeah. No, actually, we have to have 24 hours. Our meeting's at
Correct.
9.
So
So it
9.
has to be by 9 tomorrow morning.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, can you do that then? Change the agenda for Saturday, and we'll table it until Saturday, at which time we can further discussion and vote. Sound good?
So if that's the case, you may want to do the same
one
thing
will
for
be the
this.
same. I was just going to say, the same.
This one I do have an opinion on.
Yeah. The man,
I'll add all of those as agenda.
I can't make it on Saturday because I'm going for a training session, so I have some questions. So can we move on to the next agenda item?
Yes.
And table it?
yes, and we'll table it. But if you have, yeah,
So just go forward, and then you, okay. So the next item, I do have an interest in, and I do have an opinion on, is the funding of the construction project manager. So I'll just read it straight out. The Windsor Locks Public Schools Business and Operations Departments are working on securing the specifications for the 2 roofing projects approved by the Board of Finance for fiscal year 1920. The total estimates for both roofs include a projection for a construction project manager. The Construction Department of Administrative Services recommends that the district secure an owner's representative. Assist with the writing of the education specifications, writing of the RFP for the architectural services, identifying eligible and ineligible costs, and to monitor the progress of the work being conducted on the projects. This is not a fully exhausted list. It's a litany of that they expect that an owner's rep be doing of the district. Therefore, the business office is requesting that the board approve contracting with a construction project manager as an owner's representative. The business and operations departments will produce an RFQ and send to the vendors on the state DAS list, that is the the Department of Administrative Services list of approved vendors. We're also asking that the superintendent be authorized to sign the contract with the vendor for no more than $42,000, and you'll see on Saturday, this request is being made as it is outside of the scope of the current purchase policy noted below. And the purchase policy, as you know, has been revised by the policy subcommittee and approved, it's been ratified, but it's still over the limit. And as with everything, I bring these items to you. So the district has secured a quote for the construction project management service, and will continue to secure additional quotes over the coming days. So we have a quote. The range will be somewhere between $30,000 and $75,000. So based off of what we just discussed about the year-end task list and having some savings there, I'm operating off of what I can afford based off of that list. So that's why the number is kind of wonky. It's $42,000. That's a do not exceed dollar amount. So before we start with, I just want to let you know, after the that whole process and the Board of Finance approving the request for moves to be done for the Board of Ed, I was invited to a training session at the state for the Department of Administrative Services. And at that point, they have attendance business managers and there to talk about sort of new, I'll say, that the Department of Administrative Services has to school construction. And at that point, they're talking about how owners, they called it an owner's rep. I'm thinking, if I'm paying you, you're representing me. As far as an architect is concerned, or their position is that an architect does things, construction company does construction things, and then there's somebody who is going to help manage the exercise. And because they changed the process and the systems by which they submit for state management for these school construction projects, they were trying to get ahead of folks and letting know that you really need to have what be written into what they call ed specs, education specs, because that's the linchpin when it comes time to audit the whatever it is they project. And they determine how to reimburse you for that money because your ed don't line up with what's actually happening in this project. So, and that's there's been this friction over the last couple of years with school districts not getting reimbursed or reimbursed and being told they had to pay the money back because the state will do progress payments. They'll help you because they know they don't have the liquidity to be fronting a construction company and waiting for them to pay 15 months later. So go ahead under the expectation that your progress payments are righteous and legitimate, that there are no things in there that should not have been in there, and they pay it just to keep us afloat. But then they come back and they also they do something called an 11% retainage. It used to be 6%. So Dennis might from your years in the seat, but now it's 11%. So, and they are doing it because they are saying that they are reimbursing districts or towns, municipalities, beyond what they should have had a deep dive before they reimburse the district or the town. That district and or town might not have gotten that reimbursement. So this is how they're trying to slow up overpaying people, number one, and number two, trying to ensure that districts and towns are asking what it is they need funding to do. And what construction architectural firms do is they say contingency. Well, the state's position is they don't pay contingency. Either that is got to get fixed or you don't. So they are reimbursing anyone on contingency.
Say that one more.
What happens is
If the cost is over,
if the cost is over,
contingency, and they're not going to reimburse us for
their
anything
position
because-
is you, the district or the town, had done proper due diligence and had the right folks in place assessing and evaluating the project needs, there would not be as much. There's always going to be contingency.
Yeah.
But there are some projects that have, you know, like 8-10% contingency. And like that's too much. Your contingency shouldn't be any more than 10%. So if they're looking at reimbursing us at a rate of, let's pretend, no one has told me, a rate of 50%, they have a problem with that. Because when they go to budget and determine what they're going to approve and their project to be reimbursed, and they're not reimbursing off of contingency.
Not even a certain, like, 5%?
No, because they want it laid out. So if you suspect that there is asbestos based off of the age, and this has literally been told to me. I'm an MBA, I'm not an MBA. Exactly to them when the deputy said that to me. I said, how am I supposed to know this? You know, and how is the construction firm supposed to know this until we contract? We don't know what's going on with the building. You got to pay people for subject matter expertise. So their attitude, you get yourself somebody who's an owner's rep, who does the due diligence, make sure, figure out how old the building is, and then surmise. That's probably asbestos in that space. How much? It's
Oh my gosh.
It's again. I get it. I pay state taxes, so I get what they're trying to do. They're very fixed and focused on keeping their budget tight and locked in, and I guess they've been having a hard time getting the money back from the respective towns and schools that they've overpaid. So they are now putting an anchor in the ground and saying, we're not putting ourselves in the position of trying to get the money back from you after the fact. We're just not going to cover it.
So at this stage of the game, we're going out for a quote. I don't want to get into I don't want to get into the precise acronym, but we're going to go out there and get a number from professionals as to what it would cost to do this project.
That's
correct?
why the project or the owner's rep piece. We have that.
Well, then we're getting someone to come in to do the work for a certain price. That's what our owner's rep is going to create a bid or a project for people to bid on to do the work, correct?
Right.
Okay. We have an idea of what that would cost, but until actual bids come in,
Right.
we don't know.
Right.
So you're saying that this is going with our estimate at this point in time, and if we have contingencies in that estimate, we already know they're not going to reimburse on that?
So, no, what I'm saying, when we went before the CIAC and the Board of Finance, it was based off of an estimate from a construction company that does this kind of work.
Yeah.
Free estimate. So there was no full-on bid, process, there was no RFP, none of that. So it was a free estimate based off of an organization that the town and the board has worked with in the past. So they did us a solid speak. That's what ends up happening with these with the way we do capital improvements in this environment. So, which is fine. It's a target. Okay? So when the owner's rep goes to do more diligent look at what needs to take place, meaning how much does he think an architect is going to cost, engineering cost, over and above what the construction company who threw us an estimate is going to cost, then he scopes all that out. But he also is going to write it into RFP for the architect and for the construction company and everything else that they need to have in place. So when what he or she, I keep saying he may write something completely different than what the construction company had came up with. Once we figure out who this person is going to be, know what our target budget is based off of what the town can bear. They'll know that. And then they write the ed specs. The education specs is what is required for the state to approve our project. So the state can approve the project with specs that have this much detail. They prefer ed specs that have this much detail. Then they can definitively say, we know the state have to cough up a percentage of X dollar amounts for this town. So it's the ed specs that make the difference. If it's not in the ed specs, their position is not going to cover it.
But if they run into something that they did not expect, then what?
It all depends on what it is, because if the state told me, if you run into something that wasn't expected, if the state believes you should have known, and you should have put in your ed specs that this is what you will be encountering, then they have the right to say, okay, we're not covering.
But if we hire a general manager and he gets the quotes that are accurate at the time, how can they hold him responsible?
No, because that's when the ed specs are the first thing that gets generated. So without this individual, that's Steve and Charmaine writing those specs. And he and I don't want to write those ed specs, especially since now we know that whether or not the state will be predicated off of what's in the ed specs. So even if he gets his, I'm pretending, but even if he gets his cousin to write the ed specs, and that cousin is a construction person or an architect, it's very different when you have somebody who is going to come in and do the walkthrough, evaluate the blueprints, the history of the building, deal with the respective people at the town level who know what's going on with these buildings. That's very different than us just sitting around. We're trying to figure it out. That's what's been happening.
End up with an awful lot of inflated estimates in the beginning where everything's covered. Because nobody's is going to want to have something approved that isn't enough. So you're going to get
I think that's what I'm hearing has been historically the issue, is your construction company and your architects might be giving you inflated quotes, correct? And that what are we calling this person?
Construction.
An owner's rep is going to be the person looking at it to make sure that what's being put forward to the state is not inflated, and that the language that's being put into the creation of the ed specs is appropriate to what, number one, the state is looking for, and number two, is attentive to all of those pieces that Charmaine was explaining that make sure we don't end up on the hook if we're not reimbursed for something because of an inflated quote or because of an unintended situation that wasn't foreseen, whereas you have someone who understands the workings of how those specs are supposed to go forward, would be looking at all of that information from the other factors, the construction and the architect. Say, well, in a building of that age, we would anticipate it could be asbestos, and they're going to build that in.
You just used a lot of fluff words in there. Could be.
Well, but that's exactly what my counter was to them. Is you are expecting small districts and towns to operate like a Danbury, a Stamford, because that's who was there. That was and I said, no disrespect to you, gentlemen, but I'm looking at a lot of letters behind your names. You're engineers. Small towns and districts don't have that subject matter expertise, but we're still held to the same standard that you are. So again, literally the deputy for the Department of Administrative Services, he's like, you want to put in what as much as possible. And going back to what Pat had just asked about if you find something, again, if it was not feasible based on what they consider to be reasonable diligence and it's legitimate and justified, superintendent or the business calls the state and says, this is what's going on, we need you to approve this. And then they and then they'll determine whether they cover it.
You have to deal with the changes that are inherent in the economy and the bidding environment. I mean, if it happens to be a year where there's a lot of, there's not much there, it'll drive the price down. If there's a lot out there, it could drive it up. You know, the price.
But your contract beforehand, right?
Well, once you lock in the contracts, then you
Yeah.
are what you have what you have.
Yeah.
Like,
The one project manager that we did talk with, he told us in that meeting that in the past 2 or 3 projects that there's maybe been 1 or 2 changes after he helped build the specs.
okay.
And the
So that's the kind of, he walks us through the state.
and the contract with this project manager or owner's rep, does that have protection if they didn't, that should have been in there?
That's not what I understood. It's not like you
Just
can
helps
sue them
us,
for
but it
malpractice.
doesn't.
You know,
Sorry?
it's not like you can sue them for malpractice. It's just somebody who is in other projects, from what it was explained to me, and the owner's reps, there were some of them in the room, okay? As it was explained to me, that quite often you have, when you don't have a Danbury or a Stan with the head of engineering, respective cities, those are going to be the owner's reps. It's already, they're built into the system. Smaller communities, you need somebody with that subject matter expertise to be involved in the exercise and be your kid. So that's we don't get a blanket protection for that. We just get they're encouraging us to get somebody of that level of expertise to be engaged in the exercise before you start hiring architects and engineering firms and construction firms.
Are there any other projects in the whole community area, like Suffield, Granby, whatever, that we could partner with to get one? That he did part work for them and part work for us?
I think it would be a situation where you're always going to have enough work to do.
So South Windsor is doing a lot of construction, okay? And so the owner's rep for South Windsor Public Schools was there. And, the superintendent spoke very highly of him. And, but he was there at said meeting and spoke to what the experience and looks like. It's customized. So you would have a contract specific for the work and the projects that person would be working on.
Oh,
It
so
is
it's
not-
not for the district. Utilize, okay.
Yeah, it's project specific.
Okay.
Because you don't, if you're doing if the construction work that you're doing is in a school like South Windsor, building buildings, they need somebody who can handle buildings. An entire building is very different than just doing roofs. So.
Project manager wise, didn't we have some for our Windows project at the high school? We did that. They didn't build a bid for us. We're really monitoring what was happening, right?
They help with the process too. The other thing about the project manager that we're talking about now, even our 2 buildings here are 2 separate projects, which he can for each one.
Your number here is so the number you spoke about, the range, was that for both or just for each?
That's for both. It's for both. So like I said, between the 2 buildings, when you combine the cost of what the range is for construction management or owner's rep piece, it can range from $30,000 to like $75,000, almost $80,000. I'm telling you what I can afford. So
you need to find out if we can get anybody for that.
well, we already have code that is below that.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
But as I say with everything, because I know you won't be here on Saturday, I'm a big believer of using the state list because they vet these people, and should somebody misbehave, they are removed from the list. So, especially when it's a that I have no concept of how to navigate, I leverage what the state provides.
Okay. Thank you. So it'll be on the agenda for,
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
posting it right now.
It's something that, to move forward with the, have to do.
yeah. Yep.
I mean, you don't have to, they're real quick to say you don't have to.
Oh,
They are, but,
Yeah, but still,
Want to miss, I'm telling you what my desires are.
but we can pay the friend if we don't.
yeah, absolutely.
more than.
It could be a lot more than $1,000.
Mhm. Okay,
When you vote on Saturday.
okay. Good. Anything from public audience? No? Okay.
Shifting away.
So, executive?
Yeah, there's no future business.
No. Exec.
So I would move that we adjourn this meeting to executive session as permitted by Connecticut General Statutes 1-225A for the following purposes as allowed by Section 1-200, that is, discussion of collective bargaining units, negotiation, that attendance in this session shall be limited to members of the board, superintendent of schools, director of human resources, and business manager.
Second.
All in favor?
I